Good morning. We now finally come to the wrap up of this very interesting session that we've had in the consumer journey. And just before I get into the round of questions, I was sitting there and I said I must share a very interesting thought that came to me. So just a little bit, I've kind of done in terms of what I've done with my life. In a way, I've done you would say a reverse switch. So I've started and spent all my life in consumer marketing, and I worked in Nestle, Unilever, Johnson & Johnson for many years, and done pure, what we say, FMCG marketing. And then very interestingly, let's say over the last 3 to 4 years, I've kind of worked more in I won't even call it an OTC model. I just think I'm working for Abbott Nutrition in the nutrition business, OTC, and I think it's beyond that. And as I was listening to our speakers, I just thought it is just so true what they're saying in terms of the power of consumer insights to grow our industry. And very simply, if you look at the consumer, she's at the end of the day a consumer. She's not a consumer for FMCG, and she's not a consumer for OTC. But when we look at the opportunity, we see that actually in most FMCG categories, the consumer, she already knows a lot about the categories and the brands, and she knows how to use them. There is little opportunity there compared to the opportunity we have in OTC. Because if you look at most categories or the consumer need, which is the starting point, she really doesn't know enough about the category, and everything that we heard from Ajay and Ambi is so true. She doesn't really know what problem to solve for and how to solve for it. Those are the two very basic questions. And as OTC marketers, if we just really hear what the consumer has to tell us about what, or educate her on what is the real problem and the need she has, and what is the best solution, we'll probably be able to create a very strong brand and proposition. What is the greatest barrier for innovation in OTC? Do Indian companies have enough incentive to bring about switch, considering most drugs can easily be purchased across the counter, and there's like deemed OTC category in India, not a pure OTC model?
That's 3 questions. The first thing is that in every industry you encounter barriers. And if this were a cosmetic meeting or if this were a food meeting, we'd all be complaining just as much as we do as OTC. The government's against us, the consumer's against us. We do have the speciality of the doctors are against us. Smart marketeers find their way around. I was brought up as an entrepreneur. I started my own first company in 18, but I never had the courage to be only an entrepreneur, so I worked for big companies like Procter & Gamble. And the fact is, those companies teach you that for every problem there is a solution, you just have to look harder for it. And when I see what Rodrigo Herrera has done in Mexico with a completely different attitude to media buying, which I'd love to share with people here, and has built from zero a business of $1 billion, and never from day one was he ever in the red. Never, ever had an investment model. He was cash generating from month one because he just set very tough criteria. They succeeded. And I've seen other great entrepreneurs come into our business and have fantastic growth rates when the big beasts of our industry, and I only name them as a for instance, but J&J and Bayer and Behringer and all those other great companies, they're running at 3 to 4% growth historically. They're a little bit higher now. But these big beasts, these small beasts come in, and they do a great job. So first thing really is just to look, just as we talk about looking deep for consumer insights, we also have to look very deeply for the new business model. As far as India is concerned, because of your under-the-counter market, I think it takes away a lot of the incentive to pay the huge amount of money to go and do the clinicals and talk to government. But remember, you can't advertise those under-the-counter brands, and that's what's missing here in India. So I always encourage, every 2 years, but it will be only 1 year, I promise, Sangeeta, next time, that I always say, let's work harder with OPPI, with the other associations, and just try and get the government to see the real public health benefit of OTC medicine through switch.